Hey everyone, this is David. Welcome back behind the velvet rope. Let's just get right into it today because we are joined by the one, the only Mr. Craig Conover.
Thanks for having me, David. I'm pumped. I've been excited to come on for a while, so I'm glad our timing finally worked out.
Listen, is this what it takes? You have to go and write a book, Craig, for me to get you behind the velvet rope?
I know, right? Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm finally qualified to come on all of these as now I'm a new young writer, if as they say.
You are a new young writer. Well, listen, Pillow Talk, What's Wrong with My Sewing? Congratulations. Like, do you feel different now that this book is out there for everyone to read?
Yeah, I mean, it's a wild process. It took about a year and a half, and you know, I work well with feedback, and I wish I knew. It's just exciting to hear what people think, but the book, it was never meant to be like a this is what actually happened book. It was this is what also happened book. And so the more of a full, complete story I can give people of my life, I enjoy because, if you're gonna judge me, you might as well have the whole story. And I don't really have anything to hide now. So I'm happy to put more of that story out there, and it's been received pretty well.
Did you ever think, back in 2014 when you said yes to a show called Southern Charm, that 8 seasons later you'd be here an author with all of this?
I mean, it's wild. I remember, my goal at the time, Jersey Shore was kind of the baseline that we had. That was the only show on back then, other than Vanderpump had just started. And so I remember being like, if we can get 3 seasons, that means like it was all worth it. And now, yeah, I mean, our 8th season's about to come out. Just wrote, my first book. I mean, I always thought maybe I could write a cookbook. That's what I really wanted to do at first, but never did I think that I'd have enough stories, in my life at this age to write a memoir. So it was a very humbling process.
Was your aspiration to be the next Paulie D or Mike the Situation?
I was a Pauly D guy, definitely.
That's a good choice. I see nothing wrong with a little Paulie D.
No, Pauly D is great. And I've never met any of them, which is wild. I mean, almost 9 years in this world. And you'd think I would have. I walked by Snooki once in an airport, and that was it. But I've never seen any of the guys.
Did you think of going up to Snooki and saying hi and introducing yourself?
I didn't realize it at first because I uh, she was just kind of like a little meatball with a sweatshirt on, and when I realized who it was, it was too late.
Well, listen, like you say, you have nothing to hide. Like, I learned so much about you from reading this book. Like, was there anything that you kind of teetered on that made the book? Was there like one or two things that you kind of contemplated not putting in? Like, oh, this is too personal. I just don't want to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the Naomi stuff, if she hadn't agreed to be, included and interviewed, then you wouldn't have gotten nearly, as full of a picture as I wrote about, just because I just didn't feel like I owned the rights to that story. There's and especially with a breakup or any relationship, there's two sides to every story, and the truth is usually in the middle. So even my writer Blake, God bless him, he's awesome, but he was very surprised when he spoke to Naomi for the first time, because he was like, your stories match up. He's like, you both remember things the same way. And I think we were able to capture that sentimentality. And I really, obviously being in a relationship with Paige now, it's odd writing about a former love story that you had, but I think it'll help a lot of people. And it kind of, it's why I am where I am today. And, without the things like that, without big things happening like that in your life, God knows where I would be. So I think, it's an important part of the story, and I'm not going to hide it. I mean, the Adderall use, when you're hooked on it or on anything, that's when the shame is there, and you do everything you can do to suppress it. But, I haven't taken Adderall in 3 years, and now kind of my penance to that is telling my story and trying to help others. And it's kind of the opposite of shame. You're just like, no, I was that fuck, like I was the fuck up, but now, knock on wood, I'm not. And so that part of the story, I mean, yeah, talking about how I used to hide pills around the house, that, I never told anyone that in my entire life. So there was a few things that was I was like, man, I'm really doing this.
Right. When you start, listen, I get it. I mean, have you heard from a lot of people? Like, what has shocked people the most as far as, wow, that shocks me about Craig Conover from reading this book?
I haven't had that many like we were shocked reactions. There's a lot of like that makes sense, a lot of that type of reaction when you're like, I would have never thought this about you, and I would have never like, come to this on my own. But when I read it, I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. I don't think people realize how many layers there are to me. And, reading about my childhood and reading about, some of the struggles that I put on myself, but that I went through. Well, I didn't put the bullying on myself, but the other stuff was, self-induced. I think people were very surprised. This is why I like sharing the story that, I'm not just a dumb reality star. That, yeah, I am a dumb reality star, but there's a lot of other layers to that too.
Totally. I mean, listen, so I was shocked a little bit by, listen, I grew up a gay kid in the suburbs. It wasn't 2022. So I was bullied. Sure, I get it. But I was kind of shocked when I read all this stuff about you being bullied. You say attractive, gorgeous girlfriend, reality TV star, successful business person. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't think Craig Conover was bullied as a child.
Yeah, and I mean, it was I will say that that was probably the most toned down thing in the book was the extent of the bullying. I mean, it was terrible, and I was fortunate to just be bright enough and weirdly have this kind of worldliness to myself as a young child that I was able to realize how lucky I was to be able to go home to a loving, supportive family. And having that safe place is what, got me through school. And then you realize, like, a lot of the bullies, they don't have that when they go home and they're just kind of projecting. But it's hard for a young kid to be like, oh, things will get better. And so it's funny at our live show last night, a teacher asked, they were like, hey, I'm a fifth grade teacher. What advice do you have for my fifth graders? And I was like, I don't, but I was like, you guys need to beat the shit out of those bullies. I was like, that's the problem right now, because the kids getting bullied, the bullies are now the victims, and the kids getting bullied aren't allowed to do anything about it. But that's a talk for another day. But that's kind of, something that drives me, is hopefully I can make a change and, teach kids that it's cool to be nice to the other kids, and it's not cool to be mean. And but man, did that set me up for reality TV, because it's funny, because when, the first few years and you get the mean comments and the haters, I'm like, good luck, guys. Like, there's nothing you can do to even come close to what I've already been through.
I totally get that. So that really, like, for real, like, you just, when you were on reality TV, right, the trolls came out, it really was like, these, like, you never went down that rabbit hole of like, this affects me, and it was because of like being bullied.